The God of War series was once the pinnacle of action-adventure games, with extremely satisfying combat and over-the-top boss battles. Unfortunately, the same formula over numerous titles began to grow stale, with very little change and innovation being injected into the series. Now, in 2018, over 5 years since the last game in the series, which was God of War Ascension, anticipation and hype for this reboot has reached colossal levels. With a shift to Norse mythology and a tonal shift for the series in general, does God of War take the series to new heights, or is it a series that was better left alone? Find out in my review of God of War for the PS4.
Power of this weapon, any weapon, comes from here, but only when tempered by this, by the discipline, the self-control of the one who wields it. That is where the true strength of a warrior lies. You must never forget that.
God of War takes place well after the events of God of War 3, with Kratos now residing with a new family and living a relatively normal life in Midgard. The game opens with a pretty simple setup, which will unfold over the next 20 plus hours. Kratos' wife has recently passed, and her dying wish was for Kratos and their son Atreus to spread her ashes from the tallest peak of all the realms. The dynamic between Kratos and Atreus throughout the adventure feels realistic and heartwarming. Kratos really is trying to turn over a new leaf, battling with himself to be a better father and to help his son grow into a better version of himself. Thanks to wonderful writing and dialogue, a good pace, some of the most memorable side characters ever, and Kratos who no longer feels like a one-dimensional protagonist, God of War nails the setting and plots to become one of the greatest stories to be portrayed in a video game ever. You will smile, laugh, gasp, and possibly shed a tear by the end of it all. This story is matched graphically, as God of War might very well be the greatest looking video game of all time. The environments are a thing of beauty, showcasing epic scale with beautiful textures and lighting effects. As well, the character models, especially that of Kratos, are ridiculously detailed, with Kratos having one of the most badass beards you'll ever see. You can tell a lot of time was put into making everything feel real, with the characters coming alive through excellent facial animations. It's also impressive that through all this, I encountered 0 bugs or crashes, something that unfortunately is not always seen with AAA titles such as this. But definitely the most outstanding part of the visual presentation is that the game is shot as one long take, with no camera cuts, even during a cutscene. It makes everything feel extremely immersive and is a technical feat that will hopefully set the standard for years to come. The game does only run at 30 frames a second, but it still felt very fluid with virtually no slowdown or frame rate issues. And this was all running on a standard PS4. I can only imagine the little touches that the PS4 Pro would add to the overall package. The amazing visuals and satisfying plot come together thanks to perfectly executed combat and gameplay overall. With the camera moving behind the back of Kratos, I had my doubts that the combat wouldn't feel as great as previous titles, but these doubts quickly evaporated once I slayed my first few enemies. The amount of moves and combos you can perform, with and without a weapon in your hand, is above and beyond any combat system seen in the past titles. The Leviathan axe feels impactful when you are swinging through hordes of enemies, yet it still has the speed and finesse of Kratos' previous weapon of choice, the Blades of Chaos. Plus, being able to throw the axe and recall it at any point, much in the vein of Thor's legendary hammer, never gets old. The combat is made even more satisfying with a near-exhaustive list of upgrades available in regards to weapons, armor, combos, and even Atreus himself. Speaking of Atreus, he holds his own in battle as well. With perfectly mapped controls, you are able to have him help you take down opponents. Other developers take note. This is how you program a co-op AI character. The gameplay features more than just combat, with puzzle solving and exploration leading to optional bosses, collectibles, and missions. This might not be the biggest world to be depicted in a video game, but it is extremely dense and overflowing with content. I easily got distracted throughout the main adventure, but I never felt I was doing extra stuff just to do extra stuff. Everything felt organic, and the rewards for exploring were always worth the extra effort. When I finished the game, I had spent a handful of hours on optional missions, and I still have more than 10 plus hours of content to explore. This is a game where I personally won't stop until I get the Platinum Trophy. As much as I can praise God of War for hours on end, I will admit I do have a few nitpicks with it. But please note that all these nitpicks are very minor and do very little to affect my overall enjoyment of this game. God of War does offer a large variety of enemies, but by the end of the story they all feel very similar. As well, despite the setting and environments being very interesting, you will do quite a bit of backtracking during your adventure. And finally, my last nitpick has to do with the lack of large-scale boss battles that were featured in previous titles. The boss battles that are here are still awesome and very cinematic. I just wish there were more of them and that they were as epic as those of God of War 3. The love and dedication of the team at Santa Monica Studios will help ensure that AAA single-player games are here to stay. On top of having its presentation revolutionize storytelling for this medium, the combat, side missions, and overall exploration of this grand adventure easily makes this the best game of the series, the greatest PS4 game of all time, and one of the best games ever made, period. This is a game you must experience, even if you haven't played a God of War game in the past. I give God of War a 9.7 out of 10. Let me know what you thought of my review below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already for more gaming goodness. And as always, game on.
The road ahead is long and unforgiving. No place for a boy. You must be a warrior.